Myself Siddharth Chauhan, welcome to Easy Medicam. Today's part of the video will be covering about the blood supply to the cerebellum. In the previous section of the video of the cerebellum, we had covered about there are three types of fissures, mainly the primary fissure, ovulonodular fissure, and the horizontal fissure. We had covered about there are three types of fibers which are present in the cerebellum white matters. They are the intrinsic fibers, afferent fibers, and the efferent fibers. Efferent fibers are the motor type of fibers. They will leave the cerebellum, whereas the afferent type of fibers, they are the sensory type of fibers, and they will enter the cerebellum through the inferior and middle cerebellar peduncle. Whereas the intrinsic type of fibers, they do not leave the cerebellum. They will interconnect the different regions of the cerebellum together, or different folia of the cerebellum together, and they will interconnect the two cerebral hemispheres together also. So these are the types of fibers which are present in the cerebellum. So today's part of the video will be covering about the blood supply to the brain. So let's start the blood supply to the brain, to the cerebellum. If this, which I have drawn already here, if this portion of this portion is the brainstem, this portion is the midbrain, this is the pons veroli, and this is the medulla oblongata. Below the medulla oblongata, the spinal cord is present. So today we will be covering only about the blood supply to the cerebellum. So let's start. Mainly the blood supply to the cerebellum is through the vetebrobasilar system. So we have to remember that what we have covered in the previous section of the videos of the blood supply, we had covered about the vetebrobasilar system and the internal carotid system. In this part of the video, we have to remember that vetebrobasilar system. The vetebrobasilar system will supply to the posterior section of the brain, isn't it? They will supply to the posterior section of the brain, whereas the anterior section of the brain has been supplied by the internal carotid system. The posterior brain is been supplied by the vetebrobasilar system. So this is the vetebrobasilar system. This section of the brainstem is the midbrain. So we have to label this. If this is the midbrain, isn't it? This portion is the midbrain. This is the midbrain. This is the pons veroli, isn't it? And this is the medulla oblongata. And this is the spinal cord. This is the spinal cord. These two are the vertebral arteries. The two vertebral arteries will unite together to form a basilar artery at the pontomedullary junction or the inferior pontine region. So at the inferior pontine region or the pontomedullary junction, if this section of the brainstem is the junction between the pons and the medulla oblongata. This is the junction between the pons and the medulla oblongata. So this junction is called the pontomedullary junction or the inferior pontine region. The two vertebral arteries will unite together at the inferior pontine or the pontomedullary junction and form the basilar artery. If these two are the cerebellar hemispheres. So these are the cerebellum, isn't it? Cerebellum. The inferior section or the inferior portion of the cerebellum has been supplied by the two types of arteries, which are the posterior and anterior inferior cerebellar artery. They are the ICA and the PICA. Anterior inferior cerebellar artery and the posterior inferior cerebellar artery. So these are the two types of arteries which will supply to the inferior section of the cerebellum. They are the anterior inferior cerebellar artery and the posterior inferior cerebellar artery. Whereas the superior section of the cerebellum has been supplied by the superior cerebellar artery. So these three types of arteries are the part of the vetebrobasilar system. So these are the posterior inferior cerebellar artery, they are the anterior inferior cerebellar artery, and they are the superior cerebellar artery. So this is the blood supply to the cerebellum. We will be continuing about the next section of the videos with the next topic of the brain. So do like, share and subscribe my channel and press bell icon for more notification. And please guys, do comments also. Thank you. Please like, share and subscribe Easy Medicam and press bell icon for more notification.